Hi, this is Danny Korchmar from the Immediate Family.
And I'm Steve Postel from the Immediate Family.
And I'm Leland Sklar from the Immediate Family.
Hi, it's Waddy Wachtel from the Immediate Family.
Hi, it's Russ Kunkel from the Immediate Family. You're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with Jay Gilbert and Michael Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Billboard, here's why shorter songs are surging and why some welcome it.
From Bloomberg, Pink Floyd wanted $500 million for its music. What went wrong?
From Deadline, Taylor Swift ticket sales crash Ticketmaster, ignite fan backlash.
And from Billboard, what's it like using TikTok's music streaming app? And why do we care? Well, we'll tell you why we care about that because, well, I can't tell you too much, but Jay and I are strapping ourselves in here and we are ready to rock and we are glad you are here. So let us start. What do you say, Jay? We'll start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Oh, Jay, so good to see you on a Saturday morning. We're back to Saturday mornings for the time being, exactly, at least. And we have so many things to cover and a lot of things that we have sort of been talking about anyway throughout the last couple of episodes. And we have more information and so many exciting. It's been a busy week. We're heading into the holidays and a lot of stuff on the horizon. Things that we see over the horizon that are coming this way, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and before we get going, how about that intro from the Immediate Family? Some of the most iconic musicians in music history. There's a documentary coming that we've been kind of teasing out. I've only seen a small portion of it, but it's at the film festivals right now, so stay tuned for that. And I had the pleasure of seeing the band play live last night, and it was there were a lot of smiles in the crowd last night. It was great.
I can only imagine. They are such cool guys. You've known them, and I got to interview them for some NPR stuff. And they have stories, and both you and I love stories. And of course, we grew up, of course we were album jacket readers. Yeah. And you start recognizing names, and those guys were all over everything. Oh everything. Yeah.
Not Jackson only Brown, James Taylor, Carole King's Tapestry, In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins. You could go on and on and on. In fact, in this documentary, they kind of have this family tree that will blow your mind. But I was fortunate enough to, with my partner, Chris Schmidt, I was fortunate enough to shoot their last album. And we're about ready to shoot their new album. And we got to see them live last night, and it was just a joyous night.
Well, what's interesting, too, about all those guys is that in an era when there were lots of heavyweight session guys and lots of heavyweight live players, they did both. Yeah. So that was somewhat unique. And, and they're just such humble chaps. And yet, when you just kind of poke them or ask a little question, you just get the most remarkable stories.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, oh my God.
Leland Sklar is absolutely hilarious.
Yes, he is. Got a great sense of humor. And of course, he's got a funny YouTube channel as well where he goes, it's very much worth watching. And he's a local guy. He's got a book out. He is a busy hombre.
Yeah. Cool
very,
stuff.
Very cool
so
stuff.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it.
So, Jay, it's a big week in the music business, to say the least.
Yeah, the 2023 Grammy nominations were announced. The actual broadcast will be Sunday, February 5th on CBS, but you can also stream it on Paramount Plus. And not to be outdone, the actual Latin Grammy broadcast, the 2022 Latin Grammys were this last week, last Thursday in Las Vegas, officially the 23rd Latin Grammys.
Yeah, absolutely. And some very interesting things going on in the Latin market. Now, we've talked about this so much.
Yeah.
And an amazing article in the New York Times with the headline, and of course, we've talked about this artist, well, once or twice, right, Jay?
Right.
Bad Bunny anchors a year of explosive growth for Latin music. The most nominated artist at the Latin Grammys has earned blockbuster numbers on streaming and on tour in 2022.
Huge.
But he's not the only Spanish language artist finding fresh listeners. And boy, it's, and this has been, again, the when we talk about streaming and the worldwide appeal and the ex-US appeal to even people in the US, it's pretty stunning how things have moved the needle when it comes to Latin music.
Yeah, and we, I think it was about a year ago when we first met Bruno Del Granado, from CAA, and he mentioned us, hey, I love the show. You guys should talk a little bit more about what's going on in Latin music. And as we dug into it, we found that we had totally missed the boat on, Bad Bunny and the touring and just in popular music in general. And this New York Times piece that you mentioned, they had some really interesting stats. One was that in the first half of 2022, sales of Latin music recordings reached over actually it was like $510 million in the United States. And that was a new peak, according to the RIAA. So that says it may pass $1 billion by the end of the year. And here's the weird part. Of that $1 billion, 97% is from streaming, and that indicates that the audience is young, tech savvy, and according to Spotify, half of its users around the world stream at least one Latin song every month.
Man, unbelievable. As they said in the article too, Latin artists were few and far between among the industry's top tours, but that is changing. According to data from the trade publication Polestar, the top 100 tours around the world for the first 3 quarters of this year include 13 Latin artists who together sold $436 million in tickets, up from 9 with $205 million in sales for the same period in 2019, the last comparable year before the pandemic. So they're killing it. Yeah. Absolutely killing it.
So big week with the Grammys, Latin Grammys. And we have some really interesting stories to talk about this week.
Yes, we do. And by the way, speaking of tours, if Elton John is doing his last North American shows this weekend or tomorrow, I guess, or
the Dodger Stadium run.
The Dodger Stadium, yeah. And so the show tomorrow night is going to be broadcast live on Disney Plus. So if you have Disney Plus and you're not going to go down to Dodger Stadium, and I'm going to be sitting on my couch watching that last show comfortably. So it's there are several Brinks trucks that are being backed up to Dodger Stadium as we speak, right? Because this tour has just generated a ton of money.
I can't wait to watch it. Besides the fact that I'm a huge Elton John fan, his bass player Matt Bissonette is a dear friend of mine. And I've recorded with Matt. I've seen him play dozens and dozens of times. He used to play with, many people, including his brother Greg Bissonette. But he was Rick Springfield's bass player for a while. But he is a fantastic player. And it's always a joy to see him on stage with, Elton and, Davy Johnstone and Nigel Olsson. It's pretty cool.
Yes, and those guys. Nigel has been in the band since 1970, probably, and
he took a break. Elton had a different band there for a few years, with Caleb Quay and that stuff. But you're right, he's I mean,
these
they
guys
were
go
playing
back.
together.
Yes. To have still two guys in the band that have been there for 50 plus years is pretty
Crazy.
remarkable. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I wonder too what's going to happen with Elton. That guy he can't sit still. So.
Well, he says he's not going to tour, but it doesn't mean he's not going to play live.
Yeah,
he'll still do records. Elton is the king of the duet throughout his entire career. And it's not just Kiki D, right? It's like Dua Lipa, and it's like, he's played with Eminem and Guns N' Roses. I mean, it's nonstop with him. He's got such a good ear for talent.
Yes.
And I read his autobiography. I think we talked about it on the show once. And what I love about Elton is he's still a fan. Like he knows chart positions. And he mentioned in the book, he'll be talking to a current artist and he'll say, yeah, congratulations, you had this chart position. And they're like, what? I didn't know that. He knows the chart positions better than most people do.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, speaking of Kiki D and Dua Lipa, they will both be on stage in Dodger Stadium.
There
so
it is.
That'll be really, really fun. So, well, lots of things to talk about. But of course, Jay, we must chat about the wonderful folks that make it happen for us, our sponsors. We are so lucky to have them. The Your Morning Coffee podcast is brought to you by our friends at Bandzoogle, built by musicians for musicians. Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a beautiful website and EPK for your music. All the features you need for a professional website are already built in. Hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters, social media integrations, and live support from their musician-friendly teams 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go over to bandzoogle.com and try it free for 30 days. Just use the promo code MORNINGCOFFEE, all one word, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code MORNINGCOFFEE.
Yes, sir. And Your Morning Coffee, the podcast, is also brought to you by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Bands in Town, over 75 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It is the #1 artist service platform connecting over 560,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Yeah, and finally, a big thank you to the Music Business Association that puts on the Music Biz Conference. And that's been going on for more than 6 decades. And it's the point of origin for inspiration and collaboration in the music industry. So join us in Nashville, May 15 through 18, and we'll see you there.
Yes, indeed. Big thanks to the Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town, and of course the chap that I get to hang out with every Saturday, Jay Gilbert. If you don't know Jay, he is a music industry consultant, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, with which this podcast is based upon, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, Warner Music Groups, and Fox Home Entertainment.
Yes, sir. And this gentleman sitting across from me, Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Groups.
Yes, indeed. I could not keep a job very well, Jay, back in the day. Well. Truth be told.
Oh boy.
Oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It was a volatile business, Jay.
It sounds like we've had a lot of jobs, but you spread that over a lot of years, and it's not like we're hopping from one to another every year. I was at Universal all told for about 18 years.
That's pretty unique, actually. Pretty unique. That's a blessing to be able to stay at a company for that long. And what an interesting time you were there. I mean, you started at MCA, and so you saw it was sort of an also ran, but back when there were 6 labels.
Yeah, they called it Music Cemetery of America.
That's right.
Boy, they turned some things around.
And I was at SST. Remember in the days of faxes? You forget how prevalent faxes were.
Yeah.
But I was at SST and really just starting my career when across the fax, Irving Azoff's resignation letter somehow everybody got it, and they were faxing it around to all the labels, and even at a little indie label like SST. I remember reading that, and he at that time had left MCA. What a different landscape it was back then, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
so.
Happy to have been there.
Yes, indeed. All right. What do you say we jump into the stories, Jay? And starting with our first story, it's from Billboard. And we talked about this, was it last week or the week before, about this whole thing with shorter songs.
Yeah.
And this is a big one in Billboard. Here's why shorter songs are surging and why some welcome it.
Written by Elias Light, who we've been talking about quite a bit lately. And he kicks this off by talking about Lil Yachty. In early October, Lil Yachty uploaded an 83-second track called Poland to SoundCloud. And it was along with a grumpy message, "Stop leaking my shit." Poland consists of 2 keening hooks and some slack rhymes. A veteran publishing executive calls it, quote, "an idea, almost a tweet more than a song."
Well, either way, it's a hit, Jay. It reached number 40 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it's part of a larger trend. The average length of popular songs has been shrinking steadily for years. In a 2018 study by San Francisco-based engineer Michael Tauber concluded that songs on the Billboard Hot 100 shed around 40 seconds since 2000, falling from 4:10-ish to roughly 3 minutes 30 seconds. The average length of the top 50 tracks on Billboard's year-end Hot 100 last year was even less, a mere 3 minutes 7 seconds.
Yeah. Interesting.
And yeah, and it's, I think one of the things that when I think about this, and I kind of feel like an old guy saying this stuff, but a lot of these decisions are made on commerce, not on art, not on artistic expression, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of look at these going, I understand why, it's a streaming world, and there are strategies why this makes sense.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from these short form video platforms like TikTok.
And there's
where,
that.
People are used to these short little bite-sized chunks.
Yep.
And, we're seeing, a lot of that. Now, of course, short songs aren't exactly a new trend. As Elias points out in this piece, back in the early 1960s, there was the Chiffon's "He's So Fine," which was a minute 52.
Wow.
And the Beatles rose to international fame, and I love this line, by releasing a series of snub-nosed pop missiles. But I think some of this has to do with that short-form video that we talked about, but also they mentioned in this piece that people may play a song over and over again, play it more often if it's shorter.
Yes, exactly. And that's an interesting thing. And as you mentioned, people it's just the attention spans of music listeners has just, they're used to these short bites. And, it's just, that's just the way the business is now, and the way attention spans are, and the way listeners are. And so you kind of, you react to that reality. Right.
And you mentioned something a second ago that I think is key here, and that is it's a streaming world. Taylor Illitzer says, she's a former Capitol Records A&R rep. She says that people are acutely aware of skip rates and how that relates to success on streaming services. Tracks with lower skip rates are prioritized by the platforms.
Right.
And Taylor believes that a short song is less likely to be skipped.
Right, exactly. So, and as the article goes on, most importantly, song snippets resonate, like we said, with a generation of listeners used to short-form video apps. David Harris says, to me, this really started with the Vine era and Instagram. Brief clips have achieved a new level of commercial resonance in the music industry thanks to TikTok, where users repeatedly seize on fragments of unfinished singles and incorporate them into videos, making a mockery, Jay, of the idea that a popular track must include a verse and a hook. So there you go. All right.
Well, it's pointed out here, what's the difference between an explosive moment and a song? Since 2020, if not before, a heap of young acts have gone viral with the former and then scrambled to transform it into the latter, to build a full track around a snippet from TikTok. And we've talked about that a little bit, how some of these new artists, especially when we're discussing A&R, how not all of them, but there's a handful of these that maybe haven't played a live show. They haven't even recorded a full song. They only have that snippet.
Yes.
And, you know, some of these snippets that have become pretty big hits include Will Paquin's, you know, Flashy Chandelier, 85 million streams. David Kushner's Woebegone, Miserable Man, 73 million. And Avenue Beats' Goofy F 2020, 54 million. So as singles get shorter, the gap between the song and a hooky fragment begins to lose meaning.
Yeah. Let's see. So Bart Shadell, I think that's pretty
Yeah, I think so.
Who's a longtime engineer and vocal producer, said, you know, was to a lot of people, he said, I think the snippet that they encounter on TikTok is the song.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of young listeners for whom they don't know. This is just their reality. This is what they've grown up with. And yeah, a snippet's a song. What we call a snippet is not a snippet to them, it's a song to them.
Right. And they talk about it on the dance floor as well, that snippet is what they know. So Kuya Magic, a producer DJ with more than 11 million TikTok followers, says, if you go to a club and watch people dance, they only dance to the 15 seconds of a song that's famous on TikTok. For the rest of it, they just sit there.
Oh my God. Oh, if nothing makes me feel old, it's that, Jay. But I must admit, you know, once like the DAWs, the DAW, digital audio workstations with which we record this song, when they first came out, and I started messing around with them, I remember chopping up songs and adding like little snippets of the song that I liked. I would just kind of loop them together so it was longer in a song, like kind of doing my own edits.
Nice.
So maybe this is kind of expected, you know, because I think we all gravitate sometimes towards little portions of songs and kind of, it's like, oh God, I love that guitar part. Oh, I love that kind of harmonies they're doing there. So this is just kind of that on steroids, I suppose, right? You're just only getting that.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Great piece.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah,
Elias.
really good piece. Yeah. So, I mean, this is just, it's the new normal. And like I said, though, it makes sense from a commerce standpoint as well.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Speaking of commerce, this next piece is from Bloomberg.
Oh, my goodness. Pink Floyd wanted $500 million for its music. What went wrong, Jay? What could possibly go wrong?
Well, I thought this was really interesting because there's been this, you know, for the last, 2 years plus, this gold rush on these companies like BMG, KKR, Primary Wave, Hypnosis. They're buying up these catalogs. And it's interesting because you just kind of assume that they're going to be big money.
Yes.
But as you kind of dig into this Pink Floyd story, and we'll dig into it in a second, there are reasons why it's not hitting the numbers that maybe they wanted it to. I found this really interesting article, which I'll probably run in your morning coffee next week, and it's on a Journal of Musical Things. And the headline is, here's a running list of artists who have sold some or all of their catalogs to a new breed of company. And I think this is a good way to tee up this story. I'm just going to go through like some of the top 10, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Stevie Nicks, Imagine Dragons, Whitney Houston, David Crosby, Disturbed, The Killers, Lindsey Buckingham, and Barry Manilow. And some of these deals involve masters. Some of them involve publishing, name and likeness, some varying combinations of all of these. But let's dig into the Pink Floyd because there are several reasons why this hasn't hit that 500 million mark that they wanted. But let's be fair, there have been, I think they've discussed offers of, like 400 million. So it's not like this thing is a fire sale. It's just not maybe what they thought it would be.
Right. This article, by the way, is by Lucas Shaw. And so, and when I first saw this, the first thing I thought those guys were like still kind of fighting,
I think they are.
They are. Yeah, that's right. They are, as a matter of fact. So, and so there's so many variables when you're as you mentioned, when you talked about this, but then also not only are there variables what is offered for sale, but also the sort of the little catches with each thing. So, do you still have approval for certain things. And so, as the article started, it said when they decided to sell their catalog, they had every reason to believe they'd score a payday that would take care of their great-grandchildren. Legendary acts have been closing deals for record sums, and few of them had a roster of albums as popular as Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall. But as they say, months into the process, the band hasn't reached a deal. The list of potential bidders has shrunk, and the estimated value has along with it. And they said the simplest explanation is that the band is asking too much money, which has happened in other areas of the music business, including the attempted sales of Concord, Roundhill Music, Anthem, Tempo, and BMI.
That's right.
But don't forget what's going on in the economy right now. Rising interest rates have tempered buyers' exuberance for song catalogs. And then some of the most aggressive buyers, like Hypnosis songs, are also being held in check by their financial partners, which I'd forgotten that they do have financial partners.
Of course, right.
Of course. And, but you would think that if there's any band in the world that would be able to, as they say, withstand economic headwinds, that would be something like Pink Floyd. You're talking about a band that has sold 75 million records in the U.S. alone, the 10th most of any artist. It ranks among the best-selling acts in history. But this is the asterisk by a lot of these things. It says this particular process has had another wrinkle or two. As potential buyers got more details about what was really on the table, their valuations of the asset fell. The band was selling its recordings as well as the rights to use their name, image, and likeness. But the copyright for certain songs, at least in the UK, expires in a couple of decades.
Yeah, but the big elephant in the room in this article is that, like what you just said, they're talking about the masters, name and likeness. They're not talking about publishing.
Exactly.
And that's a big deal, especially when you're talking about sync licensing and some of these areas where some of these companies make a majority of their revenue. So I think the reason it's not selling so quickly is, well, like you just said, some of these copyrights are going to expire, but more importantly, it's just the master name and likeness and not the publishing.
Right, exactly. And so, I'm sure that deal will get done. And what a unique situation for having them to own their masters, but they don't want to get rid of the publishing. The publishing, I bet, is pretty complex. So I don't know, but it's these are the behind the scene things that you have to consider if you're purchasing catalogs, be it whatever the catalogs are of, and what rights do you have, and that can get sticky. And this is a band that continues to argue amongst themselves.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, singer and bassist Roger Waters left the band in 1985, and he sued the other guys over the use of the name, and which they won, and they've toured and released music as Pink Floyd, and that would be David Gilmour and Nick Mason. So, there's that infighting. Which makes it challenging, and you can't get those guys to agree on where to go to lunch, let alone how to handle this
That's right.
this big sale. But I thought it was interesting. Near the end of the piece, it says, Pink Floyd has gotten at least one offer for more than $400 million, and there is one potential buyer still hosting regular calls with the sellers. So again, it's not like this thing has gone completely south. It's just not what they expected. They thought with this kind of gold rush for IP that 500 million would be an easy mark.
It's funny what jumped out at me. It was just one of the top paragraph lines. Singer and bassist Roger Waters left the band in 1985. He has been out of the band for 30 plus years, far longer than he was in the band. I've forgotten it was been that long since he split from the band.
Yeah. It's too bad.
Goodness.
Well, anyway, I don't think we should feel too sorry for them, whether it's 400 million, for those masters, name and likeness. That's still a nice little payday.
We're not going to see those guys in a soup line anytime soon at all.
No.
Well, this is a thing that has dominated the news cycle this week, Jay. The next one, number 3 from Deadline, Taylor Swift ticket sales crash Ticketmaster, ignite fan backlash.
Oh my gosh!
A bit of a mess that
nightmare.
was. It was, ironically, my daughter was in that scrum trying to get tickets for the show, and what a mess it was. She kept getting bounced out, and it was. I was kind of seeing it in real time as she was dealing with it. Yeah, it was a mess. But you and I, before the show, were looking at the tour dates. For crying out loud, she's doing 5 dates at SoFi here in LA.
Which is a massive venue.
Which is a massive venue, absolutely. As we look through her concert dates, she's doing, in most cities, she's doing 3 stadium dates. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Well, the demand there is high, and there's some finger pointing going on
Yes.
between the various camps, which we'll get to in a second. But this piece by Tom Tapp from Deadline, I thought it was funny. He said that some compared it to the Hunger Games. Overwhelming demand from these fans who had rocketed 10 songs from Swift's most recent release, Midnights, to the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. First time this has ever happened in the chart's history. It caused what Ticketmaster characterized as, you ready for this, intermittent issues with the site. That's an understatement. Potential ticket buyers complained of waiting for hours with little or nothing to show for it. Others said they were being automatically logged out without being allowed to complete their purchases. I mean, it was just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what to say about this. It is. I mean, I on one hand, I do have a wee bit of empathy for Ticketmaster and for systems like that. When you have, even when you plan for X plus or 3 times X, when it hits 4 times X, which this sort of did, but then again, that's their business, and you would think they would have prepared for that. When you're doing 5 stadium dates in a city, that's whatever that is. I mean, just using round numbers, that could be 250,000 people getting tickets.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, and you would expect that there's more than that demand. So I can understand it crashing, but in the system, just
I don't know. I mean,
but I don't know. Yeah.
Taylor Swift and her camp were in advance, asking Ticketmaster, "You sure you got this? Are you sure you can handle this demand?" Leading up to this, so it wasn't a shock. What's interesting is that now Congress is getting involved, and if you read Glenn Peoples' The Ledger, his weekly newsletter this week, he mentions that Senator Amy Klobuchar sent an open letter to Live Nation's CEO Michael Rapino, detailing her concerns about the state of competition in the ticketing industry and its harmful impact on consumers. And as Glenn points out, breaking up Live Nation and Ticketmaster wouldn't necessarily have prevented this problem. But they mentioned in this Deadline piece that, this was brought up like in 1995 when Pearl Jam, was testifying before Congress, about what they called monopolistic practices, and they even testified on it. So, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, she tweeted, "Daily reminder that Ticketmaster is a monopoly. It's a merger with Live Nation that never should have been approved, and they need to be reined in." So I think now this debacle with these tickets is bleeding over into all of these other areas that people are angry about. But the bottom line is there was so much demand for these tickets that there was one line in here where they said that if they would have, fulfilled all of these tickets, it would have been like 90 straight stadium shows. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's but and it just seems like every year, every other year, there seems to be sort of a huge pushback on these big ticket companies, whether it's the problems with the system or whether it's insane high fees, which there are. And I don't, there is not a simple answer. That's the problem. You can't, as Glenn said, you breaking them up is not necessarily the answer. But I don't know what is, to be honest.
Well, you and I talked about ticket pricing, and that's a whole different ballgame.
Yes.
And we were educated from some smart people about, it's supply and demand. And if they don't have that dynamic pricing, it's just going to go on the secondary market anyhow. But I will say that the Department of Justice has launched a Live Nation / Ticketmaster investigation. And so, some of these things are going to to come to light. But I feel badly for the millions of fans that, they were on hold for hours. They got kicked out. Some of them, they actually got a credit card, a Capital One credit card, because there was a promotion involved there. And they thought that might help them get to the front of the line. And they did everything they were asked to do. And then it's done. And now what?
Yeah, I don't know. But what I do know is that this is going to be one of the most anxiously anticipated tours. It's going to be one of the most successful tours, and she is just going to kill it. And my goodness, when you do 5 stadium dates in a city like Los Angeles, I mean, I'm trying to think of can you name another artist that could probably pull that off?
No.
Yeah.
No, maybe Bad Bunny.
Bad Bunny, that's right.
But not very many. I had said 90 stadiums. I meant 900 stadiums. And the last thing I'll say on this is, Live Nation actually kind of riled people up even more, basically saying that, they had 14 million people hit the site, but including bots, which is a whole nother issue, right? They're not supposed to be there. And said that despite all these challenges and breakdowns, they did sell over 2 million tickets that day that would have filled that 900 stadiums. But they're claiming that the fault isn't on Live Nation or Ticketmaster, but on the incomprehensible demand for tickets. The singer, he suggested, is simply too famous.
Okay, let me write that down. Thank you for that observation.
All right.
Well, I'm kind of curious to. I would like to see the show. Having never seen her live, I'm kind of curious what I'm sure it's going to be a huge successful tour, but I'm very curious what it's going to be like. Let's move on to the next one, Jay. And this is, again, something that we've talked about a bunch over the last couple of weeks. This is from Billboard. What's it like using TikTok's music streaming app? And guess
it's
what?
not available here yet.
It's not.
What they did, which I thought was genius, is they went to these countries where it's live, and they had representatives do a test drive and see what it was all about. We call it Resso. They call it Resso. This is that TikTok, distributions for music, but they've also trademarked TikTok music. So it leads some to believe, like on socials and things, it's going to be TikTok music. But as we dig in, let's just point out that there are 1 billion active users on TikTok, and music is such a big part of it. And TikTok discoveries lead to streaming. It's been proven, in DSPs like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. And with Resso/TikTok Music, they're looking to keep those users in their own ecosystem.
Exactly, in the platform.
And we'll see. But let's dig into what they found about this Resso.
Yes. Well, as we were kind of teased at the beginning, this is on the horizon. It's not really a question of if, it is just a question of when. It says, indeed, Resso or TikTok music is coming and promises to shake up the competitive landscape currently dominated by Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and YouTube. So they checked it out, and it's interesting. There's a few things that are kind of interesting. So first of all, Resso users can comment on a song and share it on social media, okay, including lyric quotes, which users can choose specific lines for. They can also discover other people's profiles through the comment section or from the list of those who like the songs. User profiles have a picture and about me and a cover image that can be personalized. It also displays users' music preferences, playlists, following, and followers. And on Resso, users can follow and send messages to one another. Okay?
And this is something that Apple Music, actually when it was iTunes back in the day, had played around with. I know other DSPs have played around with trying to integrate that social aspect to the DSP. And it sounds like they're going all in. And I love that, you had mentioned lyric integration in there and that feedback. So, if there are wrong lyrics to a song, it's kind of like this Wikipedia thing where you can help correct those as well. They said that the discovery in Resso/TikTok music was disappointing. Similar to TikTok, users swipe up and down to navigate between the songs, which feels like the user is scrolling through a web article or navigating an endless stream of music content. Instead, the preview, next, shuffle, and repeat buttons that music players usually have. Resso displays time-sync lyrics, we talked about, but its recommendation engine lacks consistency and falls short in music discovery compared to Spotify and YouTube. I thought that was really important.
Right. They said in India, streaming the latest Taylor Swift single produced a prompt similar to Antihero, but clicking on it took a user to a playlist of the most played English language hits in India. In Brazil, a classic samba playlist consisted of only 12 songs, some of which were not classics. And then in Indonesia, initial recommendations turned up random Indonesian songs, some Japanese anime soundtracks, a lot of pop titles, and remixes or covers by lesser-known artists. So, I mean, Listen, to be honest, they are really testing it out. This is not really a fully baked product.
That's
hence
right.
Them being in these regions where, they're sort of off the beaten track in terms of the global scope. And
that's a Silicon Valley thing, right? That whole test things out, version 1.0, and improve as you scale. I thought it was interesting that they don't have import restrictions, meaning that you can import playlists from over 10 other streaming services, including Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube. I thought that was really interesting that you could pull that music in. It allows Resso access to their phone's microphone. They unlock a function to identify songs, sort of like the Shazam app. So that's kind of built in there as well.
It must be noted there are no Sony artists. Member Billboard reported earlier this year that Sony Music Entertainment pulled its catalog from Resso globally. The absence was noticeable in all 3 countries.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That is a big deal. So it says Resso's top 50 playlist in India was missing, missing just a lot of things, of course, because you don't have, one of the majors. So we'll see if that gets worked out.
Well, that's a big problem because the moment you go on there and try to find, Harry Styles and he's not there, that's not competitive. The other thing that was kind of a negative is that there were so many ads. Their monthly subscription tier is about $1.45 in India, $3.19 in Brazil, $3.46 in Indonesia for the individual plan. About the same level as Spotify in India, slightly lower in the other countries. But the number of ads per hour, on the ad-supported is higher than on Spotify, and users need to manually close those ads for the next song to play. In India, the ad-supported users are limited to 60 minutes of music per day, though watching a 15 to 20 second long video ad unlocks an additional hour. To me, that's wonky. It's not a good user experience.
Right. Now, I'm sure that they are capturing all of this data and compiling a gigantic list of bugs and features and all kinds of things like that one does with platforms. So they will work that out. Billboard had a companion article. TikTok has Gen Z hooked. Can its streaming service get them to pay for music?
Yeah.
And, they are coming full force to this market. I think everyone is eyeing this somewhat suspiciously, but also optimistically, right? Because TikTok is such an important part of the discovery of music now.
Yeah.
And perhaps whatever they deliver here in the States might be something that will really take everyone by storm. But as this article starts, it says, ask music business executives to characterize their relationship with TikTok. And the response is typically a variation of, it's complicated.
Yeah,
that is an understatement. It is complicated.
And I think that Universal Chairman CEO Lucian Grange, put it best. That when you look at the funnel that TikTok has, and you look at the billions of views, the rate in which the company has grown, he said, we will fight and determine how our artists get paid and when they get paid in the same way that we have done throughout the industry for many years. Because the big knock right now is there's just so little revenue being paid from TikTok. And as you and I covered last week, they made $12 billion in the last year. And whether that's giving the music industry, a percentage of ad revenues, a piece of the company, but you can't build your business on the back of the music business and not expect to pay for it. But the challenge that we talked about last week is that you don't want to, screw yourself out of this great promotional tool. So you have to balance the commerce and being paid fairly with having this great new force to get people to listen to music.
Hence the phrase, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
It says one of the biggest pain points for major rights holders and a potential barrier to ByteDance's entry into music streaming is the flat fee licensing agreements that TikTok has with major rights holders. Negotiations are ongoing to get TikTok to return more value for the music it uses, including a cut of the advertising it generates. And right now, as someone said, no one right now wants to help ByteDance expand into significant material marketplace without them fixing the TikTok situation, says an executive from the industry sector. Other executives pointed to YouTube as a potential model for the relationship with TikTok moving forward. In that same October earnings call that you referenced, Jay, Lucien Grange noted that YouTube recently announced that they were paying out to rights holders $6 billion over a year-long period and have stated they want to be the number one contributor of revenue to the music industry by 2025. So that's what they want ByteDance / TikTok Music / Resso to model their service on. That sort of attitude about we want to contribute lots of dollars to the rights holders.
Well, I like the way that sounds.
Yes, I do too. But it'd be interesting to see where they stand on negotiations like that.
Yeah. As Henry Droz told me, it's not about the money. It's about the money. Meaning it's always about the money.
Yeah, it's and so these licensing issues are really crucial. But as they say, if they can get these issues resolved, a new major player in the streaming ecosystem could bring in enormous value with such a user-friendly funnel. There's the possibility that a TikTok music streaming service could shake up what has become a fairly staid, predictable marketplace. Tatiana Cirisano, who's a consultant from Media, yeah. She says TikTok is where the actual cultural fandom is happening. Spotify and other streamers still benefit from this because people hear songs on TikTok and go stream them on other platforms. But if those, as you said, Jay, if those people can just stay within the ByteDance ecosystem to do that and have their music delivered to them alongside the cultural context, I think that they will.
Yeah,
I think that they will. That should really start to make Spotify and Apple Music and other platforms a lot more nervous. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but the potential is massive. And the last thing I'll say on this is they end the piece by saying that one major label executive talking about the licensing conversations, he says, and I quote, "We know the difference between hard and impossible, and we think this is in the category of hard."
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of optimism there that we can, work this out for the music industry. And again, that potential is substantial.
Right. And don't forget, though, that they do mention in this article, too, that because ByteDance is a Chinese-owned company, and it's kind of come under fire in recent years over data privacy issues. That is a different little bit of a wrinkle in this process as well. It is one thing to work out negotiations and royalties and things like that with the music companies, but you might also have sort of a federal issue to kind of work through as well. So
to be continued.
To be continued. We will no doubt talk about this in the future and have further conversations. My goodness, Jay, it's almost time to wrap it up. You were getting ready to travel and
heading to the airport.
Heading to the airport.
But we'll be back again next week.
Yes, we will. And we also, because I want big thanks to our sponsors, Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We certainly appreciate everything they do for us, and we could not do it without them. And we want to thank our listeners because we do not take for granted the fact that folks join us when we do this every week. So on behalf of Jay Gilbert and myself, we say thank you. Have a great week, and we are heading into the Thanksgiving weekend or week here in the United States. So happy holidays to everyone who's listening, and Jay and I will be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.